The resolution is adopted.
The House approves the debt ceiling extension through early December, staving off an unprecedented default. The bill now heads to President Biden's desk for signing. The White House says the federal government's rules on the vaccine mandate for private businesses will override state rules, but those federal rules are still in the works. More Americans are quitting their jobs than ever before. A record 4.3 million people left their jobs in August. This comes as the housing sector continues to see rising prices. Tune into Deep Dive as we explore these topics and more. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. An unprecedented default staved off for now.
The resolution is adopted.
In a party line vote, the House of Representatives on Tuesday approved an extension of the nation's debt limit through early December. The Senate passed the stopgap measure last week in order to avert a catastrophic default. The extension is now clear for President Biden's signature. Raising the debt limit is not an approval for new spending. It's a measure that allows the nation to meet financial obligations for money it has already spent. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen had warned lawmakers that the government would likely run out of cash by October 18th unless Congress raised the debt ceiling. The bill would increase the debt limit by $480 billion, lifting the government's borrowing limit to $28.9 trillion. The temporary extension is a short-term fix and sets up another looming potential fiscal crisis later this year when it runs out. Congress will have to revisit the issue in December. Staying at the federal level, the White House is responding to some states pushing back against the vaccine mandates. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki saying at Monday's White House briefing, "We know that federal law overrides state law." Adding, "I would note that earlier when we put out our guidance on the president's announcement about mandates several weeks ago, it made clear that requirements are promulgated pursuant to federal law and supersede any contrary state or local law or ordinance." That's after Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued his own executive order banning Texas businesses from requiring vaccines for employees or customers. But the federal government's rules on vaccine mandates for private businesses is still in the works. An emergency temporary standard from the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, implementing the order is expected in the coming weeks. Psaki said on Tuesday that OSHA's vaccine rule is not made yet, but that it will be coming. And she said that they couldn't offer an explanation of when it'll be finalized. Once the ruling kicks in, thousands of companies face losing their federal contracts. That's because they have to comply with Biden's vaccine mandate by December 8th to continue to work. Psaki called it a big, bold proposal and something that they want to implement with clarity. She also responded to skepticism about vaccine mandates and accusations that they are reducing the workforce.
I wouldn't say that that is widely acknowledged or echoed by business leaders who have implemented these mandates, by health experts who have conveyed the way to get out of the pandemic is to ensure that we are doing exactly the steps the president has announced and we are working to implement.
And what's at stake if companies don't comply? Potentially billions of dollars. Well, several companies have told employees they intend to comply. Other companies have not explained the details to employees. That's while they try to work out the finer details. This has created uncertainty for employees who are opting out of the vaccine for personal reasons. That could include religious beliefs, skepticism about the vaccine, or complicated health issues. Speaking of religious beliefs and exemptions, American and Southwest Airlines said they will comply with President Biden's requirement that employees get vaccinated, despite the state's new order that bans vaccine mandates. Both are based in Texas. And the CEO of Southwest Airlines denies that vaccine mandates were behind the mass flight cancellations. Instead, he suggests it's because of what he calls absenteeism. But the CEO also says he is not in favor of Biden's vaccine mandate for corporations. Southwest also offered up, quote, "a tremendous apology for the mass cancellations." That's after the company canceled about 2,000 flights over the weekend and cut hundreds more on Monday. Early Tuesday, things weren't looking up. The company canceled 87 flights. That's 2% of the scheduled flights that day, with another 5% delayed. That's according to data from FlightAware. This comes as another airline, United, is also in the middle of the vaccine debate. A judge is temporarily preventing United Airlines from putting employees on leave if they request vaccine exemptions. The order applies to about 2,000 workers who gave religious or medical reasons for not taking the shot. 97% of United employees complied with the vaccine mandate, but 6 people who didn't are suing. The judge says he is not ruling on the case's merits now, just maintaining the status quo during arguments. The lawsuit is happening in Texas, where the governor is trying to ban vaccine mandates for private businesses. An attorney for the plaintiffs say they want reasonable accommodations. United says it's willing to grant accommodations, but only for some employees with approved exemption requests. Now, speaking of travel, starting next month, non-essential travelers who are fully vaccinated will be allowed to cross the border from Canada and Mexico into the U.S. This type of travel has been banned since March 2020. Mexico's president welcomed the news. The measure will mark the reopening of the country to Mexican tourists and travelers. Now, speaking of jobs, more Americans are quitting their jobs than ever before. A record 4.3 million people left their jobs in August, according to the Job Openings and Labor Turnover Survey report. That's just shy of 3% of the workforce. It's the highest quit rate since the report began in 2000. So where are workers quitting the most? Most of the people who left were in accommodation and food services, wholesale trade, and state and local government education. Nearly 900,000 workers left restaurants, bars, and hotels. Over 700,000 left their retail gigs. Slightly over 700,000 left jobs in professional business services, and over 500,000 quit in healthcare and social assistance. So why are people quitting in such large numbers? Some reports point to the number of job openings, which lead to people being more picky with where to work and what to put up with. But still, companies are facing a serious worker shortage. The report found there were more than 10 million job openings at the end of August. And while the number of people quitting jobs has gone up, another area is also seeing rises: the housing industry. A major investment bank says the only way for home prices is up, at least for now. They are expected to shoot up by another 16% by the end of next year. That's according to projections by Goldman Sachs. Home prices are already at record highs, climbing about 20% of the past year. But Goldman Sachs expects the demand to continue, partly because of historically low interest rates. One strange part of the picture is most home buyers actually don't think this is a good time to buy. That's what 66% of them said in a recent survey by the University of Michigan. But Goldman Sachs says today's buyers are, quote, reluctant bulls, end quote, who will buy even though they don't believe the timing is perfect. And now, before we end, a 600-pound elk in Colorado found itself in quite the predicament. Wildlife officers tranquilized the animal and removed a tire that was stuck around its neck. The elk has been known to officials since a Colorado Parks and Wildlife officer first spotted it 2 years ago. It had the tire around its neck back then, but no one could get close enough to tranquilize the animal. Images taken by trail cameras over the years appear to indicate the tire wasn't impacting his ability to eat and drink. Still, officers were worried the tire could eventually get tangled in tree branches or something else in the environment. A tip from a nearby resident alerted CPW to the elk's whereabouts last weekend, and they were finally able to tranquilize it. The tire was filled with 10 pounds of debris and left a small wound on the elk's neck. But officials say he is in very good shape and set him free shortly after sliding the tire off his head. But what do you think? Let me know below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meier, and see you soon.